The line rang, but it wasn't her grandfather's voice. It was a caw, a peculiar sound that made his granddaughter's blood run cold. What the raven said over the phone was a dark secret, a clue that would force her to unravel the truth before it was too late. Anna's phone slipped from her hands, hitting the floor with a dull thud that barely registered in her mind. Her hearing seemed focused only on the echo of the words Edgar, the raven, had just uttered. Not a random caw, but a clear, almost calculated sequence. Hammer. Attic. 7. Gus. The air in her small apartment grew dense, icy. Anna felt her blood pound in her temples, a sharp ringing filling the void the raven's words had left. Edgar. Her grandfather's pet raven, known for imitating sounds and short phrases, but never anything so specific, so relevant. A hammer, the attic, 7, and Gus. Who was Gus? A wave of disbelief hit her, followed by a silent fury. The police had closed the case. The detective, with his tired eyes and formal voice, had assured her there was nothing more to be done. But Edgar, a bird, had just given her a clue. A shiver ran down her spine. If the police couldn't find anything, how could a raven have witnessed something so crucial? The idea was absurd, and yet it was the only hope she had left. With a strong tug, Anna snatched her car keys from the coffee table. There was no time for questions, for logic. There was only an overwhelming urgency, a need to act. She grabbed her warmest coat, feeling the night's chill seep into her bones even before stepping outside. The streets were deserted and dark, lit only by the spaced lampposts that cast long, distorted shadows. The wind howled, whipping the trees and making them dance in a ghostly ballet. Her grandfather's house stood in the oldest part of the city, a Victorian mansion that, once vibrant with stories and laughter, now loomed silent and imposing. The lights were out, windows like empty eyes staring into the darkness. A shiver ran through Anna as she climbed the stone steps. The lock groaned as she inserted the spare key her grandfather always insisted she keep. A sharp creak, almost a lament, echoed through the night silence. As she pushed the door open, a scent of dust and abandonment hit her nostrils. The air inside the house was cold and stagnant, heavy with her grandfather's absence. Every floorboard creaked under her feet, amplifying the sound of her own breathing. Moonlight filtered through the windows, creating a labyrinth of shadows in the living room, where furniture seemed like ghosts beneath white sheets. "Edgar," she whispered, her voice sounding fragile and out of place in the vast silence. No sound. The raven wasn't there. Her gaze swept the room, searching for any sign of forced entry, of a struggle, but the house seemed untouched, merely dormant. There was no sign of Edgar. Where could the raven be? Had he fled? Or worse, had he been taken? The words hammer, attic, echoed in her mind. The attic, always a place of mysteries and forgotten things. Her grandfather spent hours there, among dusty boxes and old memories. The attic stairs were in the back hallway, a dark wooden door she had never dared to open alone as a child. Anna switched on her phone's flashlight, the beam dancing across the walls as she moved forward. Her heart pounded against her ribs, a rhythmic beat that seemed to announce with each step that she was approaching something terrible. The attic door was unlocked. A mournful creak accompanied its opening, revealing an even denser darkness. The smell inside was different, older, with an almost imperceptible metallic tang. Anna swallowed hard. The answer she knew was up there, and she was about to discover it. Anna pushed open the attic door, the mournful creak echoing in the heavy silence of the house. The darkness inside was almost palpable, a dense shroud that her phone's light could barely penetrate. The smell of mold, old wood, and a subtle metallic tang she couldn't identify invaded her nostrils. Each step on the wooden stairs creaked under her weight. A macabre symphony that made her heart pound in her chest. The beam of light danced through the room, revealing piles of dusty boxes, furniture covered in white sheets that looked like motionless ghosts, and cobwebs hanging like grey veils. The air was heavy, almost difficult to breathe. "Edgar!" she called again, her voice a hoarse whisper that was lost in the vastness of the attic. No core, only the oppressive silence of the place, which seemed to have held secrets for decades. She moved cautiously, her eyes fixed on the floor and walls, searching for anything that might fit the raven's words. A hammer, a number 7, something related to Gus. With each step, dust rose, dancing in the rays of her phone's flashlight. The cold intensified, and a feeling that she wasn't alone began to gnaw at her determination. Suddenly, a movement in the shadow coming from the back of the attic. A pair of glowing eyes watched her from atop a pile of old books. Edgar. The raven was there perched, its dark feathers blending into the gloom, almost invisible. A momentary relief flooded Anna, quickly replaced by a new wave of tension. What would he do now? He watched her with an almost human intensity. Edgar tilted his head, let out a low caw, and, to Anna's surprise, hopped onto a sturdy wooden box covered by a burlap cloth. He pecked at the cloth insistently, then looked at Anna, as if inviting her to approach. Anna's heart quickened. He was guiding her. Anna knelt before the box, pushing aside the dusty cloth. The wood was dark, old, with a rusty clasp that groaned when she pulled it open. Inside there was nothing extraordinary at first glance. Some yellowed papers, an old photo album, rusty tools. But Edgar pecked at one of the papers more forcefully. It was a wall calendar, one of those her grandfather used to mark appointments with drawings of old landscapes. The month was turned backward. With trembling hands, Anna turned it over. It was the month of her grandfather's disappearance, and there, circled in vibrant red, was the day 7. Next to the 7, a small note in her grandfather's unmistakable handwriting, "Meeting with Gus, old factory." The air seemed to thin in Anna's lungs. 7 and Gus. Edgar's words weren't random. They were a map, a confession whispered by the wind. The old factory, an abandoned place known for its dark stories and as a meeting point for questionable activities. Her grandfather's note, so simple, now seemed like a desperate cry, echoing through time. But where was the hammer? She frantically searched the box again, feeling an overwhelming urgency. At the bottom, beneath the papers and tools, there was a secret compartment, almost imperceptible. She opened it with difficulty, revealing a small metal box. Upon opening it, Anna found a leather-bound diary. The first page was open, and a sentence, written in a trembling hand she recognized as her grandfather's, jumped out at her. "He knows. Gus knows about the hammer and about what happened at the factory." A chill ran down her spine. Colder than the attic air. The truth was closer than she imagined, and it was far more dangerous. The old factory. Gus. The hammer. The race against time had just taken a new and terrifying turn. The truth was closer than Anna imagined, and it was far more dangerous. Gus's name, the old factory, and that hammer, every word from the raven now echoed with terrifying clarity. The cold attic air seemed to tighten her chest, and the urgency to act consumed her. The police hadn't believed her, but her grandfather's diary, Edgar's words, were irrefutable proof that something dark lay behind the disappearance. She closed the diary, placing it along with the calendar in the secret compartment, and then back into the larger box. She couldn't leave the evidence there, vulnerable. With a trembling sigh, Anna stood up, feeling the weight of responsibility on her shoulders. Edgar watched her, motionless, like a silent guardian of her grandfather's secrets. "You gave me the answer, didn't you?" she whispered to the raven, who tilted his head, letting out a low caw that seemed almost like confirmation. Anna knew she couldn't take Edgar with her to the factory. The place was too dangerous. "Stay here, Edgar. Stay safe." She descended the attic stairs, each creak seeming to amplify the rapid beat of her heart. Her grandfather's house, once a refuge, now seemed a labyrinth of shadows and omens. The smell of dust and abandonment mingled with the night's chill. As she passed through the living room, the moonlight still cast ghostly shapes on the white sheets covering the furniture. With each step towards the front door, her grandfather's image appeared in her mind. His gentle smile, his eyes full of stories, the way he always made her feel safe. This image, mixed with a silent fury at the injustice and the dwindling time, propelled her out of the house. The wind howled outside, stronger than before, whipping Anna's hair and making her clutch her coat tighter. The streets were even more deserted, the darkness almost total, broken only by the lampposts that seemed to struggle against the dense shadows. The car engine started with a low rumble, and Anna sped off, the sound of tires on wet asphalt her only companion in her race against time. The old factory was on the outskirts of the city, a colossal structure of red bricks and broken windows, a rusted monument to a forgotten industrial era. Tales of ghosts and illicit activities were whispered about the place, and most people avoided the area, especially at night. As she approached, the silence of the road became more oppressive, punctuated only by the rustling of trees and the distant sound of a train. Anna's car stopped a safe distance away, hidden by the undergrowth. The factory loomed against the night sky, an imposing and menacing silhouette. The dark windows looked like empty eyes, watching her. A shiver ran down her spine. The main entrance was blocked by a rusty gate, but there was a hole in the side fence, a silent invitation to danger. With her phone's flashlight in hand, Anna crawled through the opening. The smell of rusted metal, mold, and something more indescribable, like ancient grime and abandonment, hit her nostrils. The floor was covered with rubble, shattered glass shards, and debris that crunched under her shoes. Every step was an effort, every shadow a potential danger. The beam of light danced across the interior walls, revealing broken machinery, belts hanging like dead snakes, and piles of scrap metal forming shapeless mountains. The echo of her own footsteps was eerie, amplified by the vast empty space. "Gus," she whispered, the name sounding strange and dangerous on her tongue. "Hammer." A feeling that she wasn't alone began to intensify. It wasn't just the silence and the darkness, it was a presence, a weight in the air that made her feel watched. She gripped the flashlight tighter, her heart pounding. Her grandfather's diary didn't lie. There was a secret here, a secret Gus knew, and it involved a hammer and her grandfather's fate. Anna moved forward, every fiber of her being screaming at her to retreat. But determination was stronger than fear. She needed to find the truth, and the truth was there, in the bowels of that old factory. Anna moved deeper into the old factory, the beam of her phone's flashlight cutting through the darkness like a trembling blade. The smell of rusted metal and mold seemed to cling to her clothes, and every sound, the creak of a piece of scrap under her feet, the distant drip of water, the subtle rustle of wind through the broken windows, made her jump. The feeling of being watched intensified with each step, a chill down her spine that had nothing to do with the ambient temperature. She passed a line of dormant machines, ghosts of a productive era. Their gigantic gears and hanging belts looked like limbs of sleeping creatures, ready to move at any moment. Anna held her phone steady, sweeping the area, looking for something, anything Edgar might have wanted her to see. Hammer. Gus. The raven's words were a silent mantra in her mind, a guide through the darkness. Suddenly, a sound, not a creak or a drip, but a dry snap coming from a section further ahead where the darkness was almost absolute. Anna stopped, her heart pounding against her ribs, the air caught in her throat. She swung the beam of light around, but saw nothing but dancing shadows. Could it just be the building settling or an animal? But the feeling that she wasn't alone turned into an icy certainty. She forced her feet to move again, advancing in the direction of the sound. With each step, the floor seemed even more uneven, covered by a thick layer of dust and debris. She reached an area that seemed to have been an improvised office, or perhaps a break room. There was an overturned metal table, some broken chairs, and in the corner, a wooden shelf almost disintegrated by time. Anna pointed the light at the shelf. Amidst the mess, an object stood out. It was a piece of dark fabric, almost black, that seemed to have been used to cover something. She approached, extending a trembling hand to pull it away. The fabric was rough and heavy. When she removed it, it revealed what lay beneath: a hammer. It wasn't an ordinary carpenter's hammer. It was a demolition hammer, heavy and robust, with a stained metal head and a darkened wooden handle. A chill ran through Anna's body. This was the hammer, the object Edgar had mentioned, the one her grandfather feared. But why was it here? And what had happened with it? Anna knelt, examining the hammer with wide eyes. There was a dark, dried stain near the metal head, which made her stomach churn. She didn't want to think about what it could be, but the image was inevitable. Blood. Her grandfather's diary. The mention of Gus knowing about the hammer and about what happened at the factory. Everything fit together in a terrible way. The flashlight's beam slipped from the hammer to the floor, and that's when she saw it. On the dusty floor, next to the shelf, there was a mark that looked like it had been made by a drag, as if something heavy had been pulled from there. And further on, almost imperceptible in the gloom, there were other marks leading to a rusty metal door hidden among piles of scrap. That door looked different from the others, more robust, with a large, heavy padlock, rusted but still closed. There was no handle, just the padlock. Was it a door to a storage room, perhaps, or a basement? The urgency in her chest turned into an icy dread. Anna stood up. The hammer still in her mind, the dark stain etched into her vision. She moved towards the door, each step echoing in her own head. The phone's light revealed that the padlock was indeed closed, and there was no way to open it without a key or heavy tools. She ran her hand over the cold metal surface, feeling the rough texture of the rust. Her eyes swept the area around the door, looking for a crack, a clue. That's when she noticed. Near the floor, where the door met the wall, there was a small opening, almost a crack, that seemed to have been forced. And from inside the crack, a smell. It wasn't the smell of mold or rusted metal. It was a sweet and nauseating smell, which Anna recognized immediately, though she had never smelled it so intensely. The smell of decay. Her knees buckled. The air seemed to thin. Her grandfather. He was there. A sound of footsteps. Clear, distinct. Not the echo of her own steps, but someone else's footsteps, coming from behind her, from the way she had entered. The sound was getting closer. Anna froze, the flashlight still pointed at the door, her breath caught in her throat. She wasn't alone, and the person approaching wasn't there by chance. She tried to turn, but before she could move a muscle, a heavy, cold hand closed over her shoulder. A scream caught in her throat. "Well, well, what do we have here?" A low, hoarse voice resonated in her ears, laden with cruel satisfaction. "Looks like the curious granddaughter found her way in." Anna felt panic rise in her throat, threatening to choke her. The phone's light trembled in her hands. She knew who it was, Gus, and he was much closer than she had ever imagined. The heavy, cold hand closed over Anna's shoulder, and panic rose in her throat, threatening to choke her. She tried to turn, but the strength in Gus's hand held her still. His breath, smelling of cigarettes and something rancid, hit her face as his low, hoarse voice resonated in her ears. "Well, well, what do we have here?" The cruel satisfaction in his words was palpable. Anna felt her heart pound against her ribs, a frantic drum in her chest. The phone's light trembled in her hands, illuminating Gus's face. His eyes were small and dark, hardened by a coldness that sent a shiver down Anna's spine. His face, once just a distant image of an acquaintance of her grandfather's, was now a mask of malice in the factory's gloom. He was taller and more robust than she remembered, and the proximity of his presence was oppressive. "Gus!" she managed to whisper, her voice hoarse, almost inaudible. He squeezed her shoulder, not enough to hurt, but enough to make his control clear. "Didn't expect visitors, especially not from a meddling little girl, but you're as stubborn as your grandfather." A thin, unpleasant smile twisted his lips. His eyes moved, first to the hammer on the floor, then to the rusty metal door. "I see you found the clues, the hammer, the door. You're smarter than you look, aren't you?" Anna didn't answer, her mind racing for a strategy, a plan. The sweet and nauseating smell of decay escaping from the crack in the door intensified, mixing with the odor of mold and metal. It was unbearable, a terrible confirmation. "What did you do to him?" she finally managed to ask, courage bubbling up from somewhere deep inside, fueled by fury and fear. Gus let out a dry, humorless laugh that echoed through the factory walls like a raven's caw. "Me, I didn't do anything your grandfather didn't deserve. He was a stubborn man, Anna, a man who knew too much and who didn't want to share." He tilted his head, his eyes fixed on the door. "He had something that belonged to me, something he'd hidden for years, and when I came to claim it, he refused to cooperate." Gus's hand loosened slightly on her shoulder, and Anna seized the opportunity, spinning sharply and pulling away from him. She pointed her phone's flashlight at him, the beam trembling. The hammer, still on the floor, seemed to glow with a sinister aura. "What did you hide?" she demanded, fear still present, but now mixed with fierce determination. "What's in there?" She pointed at the door. Gus took a step forward, and Anna recoiled. "It's none of your business, girl. You should have stayed home, playing detective with your little bird. Now you're going to see what happens to those who meddle where they're not wanted." He looked at the hammer, a dangerous glint in his eyes. "That tool, it has a story, doesn't it? A story your grandfather tried to bury, and you, Anna, are very close to unearthing it completely." He bent down, picking up the hammer from the floor with disturbing ease. The cold, heavy metal seemed a natural extension of his hand. Anna felt a chill run through her body as she saw the dark, dried stain near the hammer's head, now more visible under the direct light. It was blood. "Your grandfather. He was always a man of secrets," Gus continued, slowly turning the hammer in his hands. "And some secrets are best left undisturbed." He took another step, and Anna felt the cold factory wall at her back. She was cornered. "You're not going to ruin everything for me, Anna. Not now that I'm so close." The sound of metal dragging on concrete, a dry, harsh scrape coming from a deeper area of the factory, broke the tension momentarily. Gus stopped, his head tilted, listening. A flicker of irritation crossed his face. "Damn it," he muttered more to himself. "There shouldn't be anyone here." Anna noticed the distraction. Her gaze flew to the crack in the door, to the hammer in Gus's hands, to the darkness behind him. There was a chance, a small, desperate chance. She had to act. "What did you do to him, Gus?" she repeated, her voice stronger, trying to keep his focus. He turned back to her, his eyes hard again. "I told you it's none of your business." He raised the hammer, not in an immediate strike, but as a veiled threat. "But since you insist on being so curious, maybe you'd like to see for yourself what happens to those who meddle too much." A louder noise, this time the sound of something falling, metallic and booming, coming from the same direction. Gus hesitated, his attention divided between Anna and the approaching sound. His eyes narrowed, and he tightened his grip on the hammer handle. "Stay here," he hissed at Anna, a warning laden with danger. "Don't move. I'll be right back." He took a step back, turning quickly and disappearing into the darkness from where the sounds came, the hammer still in his hands. Anna heard his footsteps receding, the sound diminishing until the silence, which had previously seemed oppressive, was now even more terrifying. She was alone again, but Gus's threat hung in the air. The rusty door with its nauseating smell seemed to call to her. Her grandfather was there. She had to open that door. Anna felt her heart pound, a frantic drum in her chest, as silence settled over the factory, heavier and more menacing than the sound of Gus's footsteps. Every shadow seemed to move, every distant noise an omen. She was alone, yes, but the feeling that she wasn't safe was overwhelming. Her eyes returned to the rusty metal door, the massive padlock still in place, an insurmountable symbol between her and the truth. The sweet, putrid smell emanating from the crack seemed to have intensified, enveloping her like a shroud. It was the smell of death, and with each inhalation, a knot formed in her stomach. She knew, she felt it. Her grandfather was there, on the other side, and the urgency to reach him burned in her chest, overcoming her fear. With trembling hands, Anna raised her phone again, the faint light dancing over the corroded surface of the door. She ran her fingers along the crack, feeling the rough edge of the metal. It was too narrow to see anything beyond impenetrable darkness. But perhaps she could feel. She forced her fingers into the opening, trying to widen it, but the metal was unyielding. Then her eyes fell to the floor, near the crack. Small fragments, almost imperceptible in the gloom, of something that looked like wood, thin splinters mixed with dust and rust. And a little further on, something gleamed. A small, metallic object, almost hidden beneath a layer of dirt. Anna knelt, her knee scraping against the cold concrete. She reached out, her fingers brushing the object. It was a key, small, old, with an ornate design she recognized immediately. It was the key to her grandfather's tool shed, which he kept on a special keyring. But what was it doing here, and why was it so small? Anna picked up the key and examined it under the phone's light. It didn't look like an ordinary padlock key. Her eyes moved to the padlock, then to the crack. There was no visible lock on the door, only the external padlock. The key didn't fit there. She looked at the crack again, and then a tiny, almost imperceptible detail caught her eye. Inside the crack, deep within, there was a small recess, a dark cavity. It looked like a miniature lock, hidden within the crack itself, accessible only by a very specific key. A pang of hope, almost painful, hit her. It was a secret lock. Her grandfather had always been ingenious. With her heart pounding, Anna inserted the small key into the cavity. She felt a soft click, almost inaudible, that resonated more in her mind than in the environment. She turned the key. A muffled, ancient unlocking sound echoed from inside the door. It wasn't the padlock, it was something more. She pulled the key out and pushed the door with both hands. The metal groaned, dragging with a prolonged, sharp squeal, but it didn't give way completely. The padlock was still there, but the door was no longer completely sealed. There was a small gap, a millimeter of opening, enough for the putrid smell to explode in an overwhelming intensity, making Anna recoil with a gagging sensation. The phone's light, now aimed at the opening, revealed an even deeper darkness inside. But not just darkness. There was a silhouette, something large and motionless, and a voice. Not her grandfather's voice, a different voice, weak, drawn out, almost a whisper. Anna. The sound came from within. It wasn't her grandfather, but someone, and that voice. Anna knew it. A chill ran down her spine. It wasn't Gus. It was a voice she hadn't heard in years, a voice that carried memories of a distant and painful past. Before she could process the information, a new sound filled the factory. A metallic clang, much closer this time, followed by hurried, heavy footsteps. Gus was coming back, and he wasn't alone. Anna felt panic freeze her veins. She was trapped between the half-open door, the mystery within, and the imminent threat approaching from behind. She had to choose, and fast. Panic froze Anna's veins, but the whispered voice, familiar and ghostly, pierced through the fear. "Anna!" It wasn't her grandfather, but it was someone she knew, someone she hadn't heard in years, a voice that carried memories of a distant and painful past, an echo of a loss she thought she had overcome. The metal door, now with a minuscule crack, seemed a portal to a forgotten nightmare. Gus's hurried footsteps and the metallic clang drew closer, each beat an urgent reminder of the imminent threat. She was trapped between past and present, between hope and danger. There was no time to hesitate. With a muffled cry of pure determination, Anna pushed the door with all her strength. The metal groaned again, a creak of pain that seemed to tear the sound from the factory itself. The external padlock was still there, but the door now opened at a narrow angle, just enough for Anna to squeeze inside. The putrid smell, previously just a premonition, exploded in a nauseating wave, making her cough and struggle to breathe. The darkness inside was almost total, broken only by the faint light of her phone, which trembled in her hand. The silhouette became more defined. A figure sat on the floor, leaning against the opposite wall, wrapped in rags and shadows. Her hair was tangled, dirty, and her face, turned towards the light, was unrecognizable at first glance. But her eyes were the same, blue, deep, filled with an ancient pain and a flicker of recognition. "Mom," Anna whispered, her voice breaking. It was impossible. Her mother had died years ago, a victim of a mysterious illness her grandfather always refused to discuss. The grief, the void in her life, everything seemed like a lie now. The woman, emaciated and weak, moved her head slowly, a visible effort. A moan of pain escaped her cracked lips. "Anna, you came." Tears welled in Anna's eyes, mixing with the dirt and sweat on her face. There was no time for questions, for the overwhelming shock of the discovery. The sound of heavy footsteps and multiple voices became undeniable. Gus was there, and he wasn't alone. "Anna!" Gus's voice echoed through the factory, full of rage and surprise. "Where did you get to, you meddling girl?" A strong beam of light, more powerful than her phones, invaded the crack in the door, blinding Anna for an instant. She turned sharply, her heart pounding against her ribs. Gus stood in the doorway, the hammer still in his hand, his face contorted in a wild fury. Beside him, a tall, burly figure, his face covered by a bandana, held an iron bar. Gus's eyes widened when he saw the open door and the figure inside. A cry of outrage escaped him. "You! How did you open this?" Anna didn't answer. Her eyes moved from her mother to Gus, to the iron bar, to the darkness that seemed to swallow them. She was cornered, but she was no longer alone. The revelation of her mother, alive and imprisoned, was as great a shock as Gus's threat. This changed everything. Her grandfather hadn't disappeared. He was involved in something much bigger, something that involved her mother's very life. "It doesn't matter how," Anna said, her voice trembling, but with a strength she didn't know she possessed. "You're not going to hurt anyone else." Gus laughed, a dry, cruel sound that reverberated through the factory walls. "Ah, Anna, you really don't understand, do you? Your grandfather, he hid many things, and your mother. She's the key to everything, but now, so are you." He gestured to the man beside him. "Get them, and make sure they don't escape this time." The man with the bandana took a step forward, the iron bar swinging menacingly. Anna felt an icy chill run down her spine. She was outnumbered, and her mother was weak. The situation was desperate, but the sight of her mother, alive, gave Anna a new wave of courage, a fierce determination that overcame her fear. She wouldn't give up. Not now. She couldn't. The man with the bandana advanced, the iron bar swinging in the air, a whistling sound cutting through the gloom. Anna retreated into the crack, pulling her mother with her, the woman's frail body almost weightless in her arms. The smell of decay was suffocating, but the adrenaline suppressed the nausea. "Mom, are you okay?" Anna whispered, her voice choked. "No time, Anna," her mother replied, her voice hoarse, almost inaudible. He's going to kill us." Gus stopped in the opening, his gaze fixed on Anna's mother. A complex expression crossed his face, something between triumph and despair. "You can't hide forever, Elara," he snarled, his voice laden with ancient hatred. "What's mine is mine." The man with the bandana tried to force his way into the crack, but the opening was too narrow for his burly frame. He grunted in frustration, banging the iron bar against the metal door, a clang echoing through the factory. Anna felt the vibration on the floor beneath her feet. "What does he want, Mom? What's happening?" Anna asked, her eyes darting around the small, dark space. "The diary. Your grandfather's diary," Elara replied, coughing weakly. "He thinks I know where it is, but I don't. Your grandfather, he hid it well. He knew Gus would come." A shiver ran through Anna. The diary. Edgar. The words of her grandfather's pet raven. Diary, hidden Gus, danger. Everything fit. Her grandfather wasn't just missing, he was protecting something, and her mother was a crucial piece of that puzzle. Gus, overhearing the conversation, laughed again, a harsh sound. "The diary, yes. And you know where it is, Elara. You were always the old man's favorite. He'd trust you with even the secret of eternal life." Anna felt a tremor in the floor, stronger this time. The man with the bandana was kicking the door in a fury, the blows reverberating like war drums. The crack was slowly giving way, the metal groaning under the pressure. They wouldn't have much time. "What's in this diary?" Anna demanded, turning to her mother. "The truth, Anna. The truth about everything. About what Gus did. About your grandfather's research. About my death," Elara said, the last word laden with bitterness. Anna's phone light danced across the walls of the tiny room. She realized it wasn't just a dark room, but a small, makeshift office filled with dusty boxes and stacked papers. In one corner, a rusty metal shelf was laden with books and strange objects, and there, almost hidden behind a bundle of old maps, was a small wooden box. "Mom, look!" Anna pointed, her heart pounding with new hope. Elara raised her head, her weak eyes following Anna's finger. A flicker of recognition, almost terror, lit up in them. "No, it's not possible. He wouldn't have—" "What is it?" Anna asked, already moving towards the box. "It's your grandfather's puzzle box," Elara whispered, her voice more urgent now. "He used it to keep the most important things. Only he knew how to open it." The sound from the door intensified. A splinter of metal broke off with a snap, and the opening widened a little more. The man with the bandana was starting to force his way in. Anna had no time. She grabbed the wooden box. It was heavy, adorned with intricate carvings, and a small golden padlock. It wasn't the padlock she expected. It was a combination mechanism, with symbols instead of numbers. "The symbols," Anna murmured, remembering Edgar's words. "The raven, the clock, the tree." "Anna, no!" her mother cried, trying to stand, but weakness brought her down. "It's dangerous. Gus will do anything for it." The door gave way with a final groan, the metal bending inward. Gus and the man with the bandana now had enough room to enter. Gus's flashlight beam swept the room, stopping on the box in Anna's hands. "The diary!" Gus shrieked, his eyes wild with greed. "Give it back to me, girl, now!" Anna clutched the box to her chest. She could see Gus's face, distorted by fury, and the iron bar in the other man's hand. She was cornered, but the puzzle box was her last hope. She had to open it. She had to find the diary. Her mother's life, the truth about her grandfather, everything depended on it. With trembling fingers, Anna began to turn the symbols, Edgar's words echoing in her mind like a mantra. Time was running out. Anna worked the puzzle box's symbols beneath her trembling fingers, Edgar's words echoing in her mind like a melody distorted by panic. The raven, the clock, the tree. She turned the first dial, aligning the raven carving with the mark. Gus let out a roar, and the man with the bandana advanced, the iron bar whistling through the air. Anna flinched, shielding the box with her body. As the blow struck the rusty metal shelf beside her, a metallic crash that made the small office shake. Books and papers flew, falling on them in a cloud of dust and cobwebs. "Give that back, you insolent brat!" Gus yelled, his voice hoarse with fury and desperation. His bloodshot eyes were fixed on the box. He looked like a cornered animal, ready to strike. "No!" Anna retorted, her own voice a thread of courage. She turned the second dial, the clock symbol clicking into place with a soft, almost inaudible sound amidst the chaos. Anna's mother, Ilara, coughed violently, weakness preventing her from moving, but her blue eyes were fixed on her daughter, a mixture of fear and hope. The man with the bandana tried to grab Anna, but she dodged, using the shelf as an improvised shield. The iron bar scraped dangerously close to her arm. She could feel the heat of the metal, the smell of sweat and fear. "I'll kill you if you don't give me that box!" Gus threatened, stepping forward, his hands outstretched. His face was contorted in a mask of hatred. Anna felt adrenaline pump through her veins. She had no choice. With slippery fingers, she turned the last dial. The tree symbol aligned. For an instant, nothing happened. Then a more distinct and satisfying click echoed through the room. The small golden lid of the lock sprang open, revealing a simple mechanism. "I did it!" Anna exclaimed, more to herself than to the others, a breath of relief mixed with dread. She opened the box. Inside, there wasn't just one diary, but several small leather-bound notebooks and a series of yellowed papers tied with string. The air smelled of mold and ancient secrets. Gus saw the box open. A cry of triumph and malevolence escaped his throat. "Finally! It's mine! All mine!" He lunged at Anna, his hands like claws. But Ilara, with a strength that seemed to come from maternal desperation, managed to lift a trembling arm and pushed an unstable pile of empty boxes that were near the wall. The boxes fell with a crash, creating a momentary barrier between Gus and Anna. "Anna, grab the diary! Run!" Ilara cried, her voice hoarse but full of desperate urgency. Anna grabbed the first notebook she saw, the thickest one, and clutched it to her chest. The leather cover was worn, and her grandfather's name, Arthur, was engraved in faded gold letters. She could feel the weight of the truth in her hands. Gus, stumbling over the fallen boxes, roared in frustration. The man with the bandana tried to get around the pile, but the space was tight. Anna saw her chance. Without hesitation, she turned and ran for the crack in the door, which was now wider. The metal groaned as she squeezed through, the diary held firmly in her hand. "No, get back here!" Gus bellowed, his voice echoing through the factory. Anna could barely breathe, the air dense with the putrid smell. She could hear Gus's heavy footsteps behind her, the sound of the iron bar banging against the metal of the door as he desperately tried to reach her. She didn't look back. Her only thought was to escape and protect the diary. She emerged into the main factory floor, the gloom broken by beams of light filtering through the broken windows. The floor was uneven, covered with debris and rusted machinery. She ran, her heart beating like a drum, her lungs burning. Suddenly a sound. It wasn't Gus. It was the distant wail of a siren, and not one, but several. Hope flooded Anna, a cold, invigorating wave. Someone had arrived. Gus, who had just emerged from the office, stopped abruptly. The sound of the sirens pierced the factory's darkness, growing louder with each passing second. His eyes widened. "No, it can't be," he muttered, the fury on his face transforming into pure terror. The man with the bandana, who was right behind him, also froze, the iron bar falling from his hand with a dull thud. Anna stopped, panting, looking back. Gus stood still, paralyzed by the approaching sound. The blue and red lights of squad cars began to dance faintly through the distant windows, painting the factory with ghostly hues. "It's over, Gus," Anna said, her voice weak but imbued with new authority. She clutched the diary to her chest. "The truth will come out." Footsteps approached rapidly. Male voices and muffled commands filled the air. The main factory door burst open with a crash, and powerful lights flooded the space, revealing uniformed figures. The police. Gus, in a last act of desperation, looked at Anna, then at the diary, and then at the darkness at the back of the factory. He knew he was cornered. With a grunt of pure rage, he tried to run, but was intercepted by two officers who had already entered and were sweeping the area. One of them tackled him to the ground, handcuffs snapping shut. The man with the bandana was quickly restrained as well. Anna collapsed to the floor, the adrenaline draining away, leaving her in a state of exhaustion and relief. An officer approached her, his voice calm and professional. "Are you all right, miss? And who else is here?" Anna pointed to the crack in the door. "My mother. She's in there, and my grandfather. The diary. It has all the answers." The officers acted quickly, one of them entering the small office to rescue Ilara, while others examined Gus and his accomplice. Minutes later, Ilara was brought out, pale and weak, but alive. She looked at Anna, and in her eyes, Anna saw not only gratitude, but also a deep pain, an untold story that was now about to be revealed. "What did Gus do?" one of the detectives asked, taking the diary from Anna with gloved hands. Ilara, supported by a paramedic, replied, her voice still hoarse but stronger. He tried to steal my father's research into a new form of energy, clean and abundant. But my father discovered that Gus was tampering with the results, planning to use the technology for military purposes. He confronted him. Gus. He kidnapped me to force my father to hand over the data. He faked my death so no one would suspect. Anna felt her stomach churn. Her mother's mysterious illness, the grief, everything was a cruel farce. Her grandfather Arthur hadn't disappeared. He had become a prisoner of his own invention, a silent hero who had sacrificed everything to protect the truth. "And your grandfather?" the detective asked. A tear streamed down Ilara's face. He refused to give in. He hid the diary and the data in a safe place before Gus took him. "He told me that if anything happened, Edgar, the Raven, would guide me. He knew I would have to tell the truth." Anna felt a lump in her throat. Edgar, the Raven, the one who started it all. He wasn't just a pet. He was her grandfather's last link to the outside world, the guardian of his final message. "Is Grandpa still alive?" Anna asked, her voice choked with hope and fear. Ilara looked at her, her eyes filled with sadness. "He did everything he could, Anna. He kept me safe even from a distance for years. But Gus, he doesn't forgive. He took him somewhere else, a place he called the Nest. I don't know if he still is." Her voice broke. The detective closed the diary carefully. "We'll find out. This diary is the proof we need. And you, miss, you're a hero." Anna looked at her mother, finally free, and at the factory that was now filled with light and people. The race against time had come to an end. But the real journey, that of rebuilding what was lost and finding complete justice, was just beginning. She still didn't know her grandfather's exact whereabouts, but now she had the tools to find out. The truth, as Edgar had promised, was there, and with it hope.